You know the music. Time to dance.
Hello, beautiful.
Pods. Now.
If you take sexual advantage of her, you're going to burn in a very special level of hell. A level they reserve for child molesters and people who talk at the theater.
Welcome to part 4 of my Halo ranking series, where I am playing through the Halo campaigns for the first time ever in release order and ranking them in my order of preference. I'm going into these games as blindly as possible and without reading any of the extended universe stuff like books or comics, and I'm playing these all through the Master Chief Collection, so I am missing out on any juicy lore that might have been included in the manuals that we used to get with physical copies of games. I'm also not talking about any multiplayer modes because I've never had any friends, so these modes are of no interest to me. While I am doing my best to avoid as much information about these games as possible before playing them, I have existed on planet Earth at the same time as the Halo series, and as such I have inevitably picked up some bits and pieces of information through osmosis. Like, I know Cortana goes missing or something at some point, I know Bungie stopped making these games after Reach, and I've gotten the impression that ODST is one of those games that is much more highly regarded now than it was on release. While I do try to go into these games as blindly as possible, once I finish them I will do a bit of digging into their development. By a bit of digging, I mean reading Wikipedia and looking for a making of documentary on YouTube, and I'm especially glad I did because it's helped me to understand ODST for what it is. I had a vague memory of ODST not being well received when it came out in 2009, which at the time I had assumed was likely due to it being more of an expansion pack or something rather than a full game, based purely off the fact that it had a number 3 in the title despite Halo 3 already being a thing. That seems to pretty much be what happened, and I'll be honest, I still think that charging full price for this was a bit ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, expansion packs can be fantastic experiences. Shivering Isles, Mystery of the Sith, Opposing Forces are all fantastic expansion packs that give you more of the game you loved with some new features for you to play about with, but key thing is that none of them were full price. I'm playing ODST for the first time in 2025 through the Master Chief Collection, which I downloaded as part of Game Pass. So the last thing I was thinking about while playing this was how much it might have cost me 16 years ago. Judging by comments people have left on my other videos, ODST is something different from the games that had come before it, and many people now rank it highly, if not the highest, in the entire series. The behind the scenes documentary I found was pretty eye-opening for me. Bungie wanted to part ways with Microsoft, but Microsoft required them to make another 2 Halo games and then leave the IP with them, and then Bungie could go off and do whatever they wanted, which was basically Halo again, but in a way that I hold entirely responsible for the dogshit live service games we are stuck with now. I've probably got some of this wrong, but it looks like Peter Jackson was involved in a game called Halo Chronicles, which was cancelled around the same time that Reach started development, freeing up some teams within Bungie. With Reach set to be released in 2010, they figured they could use their newly acquired downtime to put together a smaller mini-campaign within a year. An ambitious proposal, certainly, but necessity often drives innovation, and the team bounced around different ideas for settings, as they wanted to avoid playing as the Chief or the Arbiter so as not to mess up the established storyline. Long story short, they settled on focusing on a team of ODST units, who were apparently fan favourites, but I've just played the first 3 games and had no idea what ODST even stood for until this game told me. Apparently the scope of the mini-campaign got bigger and bigger until they had what they considered to be a full game, which explains the original price point, I guess. For anyone who doesn't remember, 2009 was a bit of a transitional time for games. For years prior to this, multiplayer modes were just a fun little extra thing that came with the main game, something to be played after experiencing the single-player campaign. With the introduction of the 7th generation of consoles, single-player experiences started getting shorter in favour of the teams focusing on the multiplayer modes, which were much more accessible to people thanks to the increased online functionality of those consoles. There was some vocal pushback to this from us older gits though, as we were having our single-player experiences shortened and the inclusion of a multiplayer mode being marketed as an adequate replacement. I think this mostly came to a head later on when Titanfall released with no single player campaign at all and still charged full price. So for ODST to claim to be a full game just because it had some sort of campaign and some multiplayer modes and releasing at this point in time, I'm not surprised that people were a bit cold to it at first. That said, this was the best-selling Xbox 360 game of 2009, which makes sense. I mean, Halo is right there in the title. The major media outlets all gave it very high scores, but plenty of these new YouTube reviewers were pretty upset about it, mainly because of how short it was and how much it cost. But like I say, the general consensus these days is that this is a fantastic entry into the series, and many people hold it up as their favourite. But we don't care about those people, we care about my opinion, so that we can finally decide once and for all whether ODST is any good or not. Quick spoiler, yeah, it's pretty good, but stick around for some more details, eh? Also, I will be going into the story details for this game and possibly some of the Halo games before it, so here's your spoiler warning if you're like me and have managed to not play these games over the last 24 years. But before we get into all that, I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this video, the squad of ultimate badasses that will protect you, the Patreon members. Memberships directly support this channel and help this piss poor excuse of an operation chugging along, and tiers are as low as £1, and in addition to my deeply genuine and eternal gratitude, patrons also get credited in videos like this and early access to ad-free releases. I am incredibly grateful for any and all support, and the fact that people even watch this tripe is kind of mind-blowing to me, so thank you very much for all of your support. And we can now finally dive into Halo 3 ODST. I didn't really know what to expect going into this game. I had seen promotional art for it over the years, and plenty of comments had told me it was different to the previous games. In my mind, I was half expecting us to be playing a regular soldier on the front lines of the war against the Covenant, and that the game would feel more like Call of Duty, with that being firmly established as an unstoppable juggernaut at the time this came out. And honestly, I'd have been good with that. Republic Commando made efforts to show the Star Wars universe from a different and more gritty perspective, and I still fondly remember that game and more on the sequel that we never got, so I guess I was also hoping for something along those lines. And narratively speaking, that's almost what ODST is. The game tells us that ODST units are the best of the best, which makes me wonder if that means that the Spartans are
the best of the best of the best, sir!
I must say that I very much appreciated the little text scroll thing at the start of this game. Playing the series through the Master Chief Collection means I don't have access to any manuals, which I have no doubt would provide backstory and details on this world and the key events. So this was the first time I had any idea when all of this was happening. It was also the first proper suggestion I had seen that humanity was all but losing this war, which is a context I would have appreciated sooner in the series, but like I say, this was probably covered in the Manual for Combat Evolved. We're also told that we are currently in the midst of the attack on New Mombasa that we saw at the start of Halo 2, and we are going to drop in on the Covenant cruiser to take it out. We are then introduced to our squad, which was a bit of a fangirly moment for me. I'm a big fan of Firefly, so finding out that my squad is made up of Alan Tudyk and Adam Baldwin with the Sublime edition of Nolan North just put me in a nerdy happy place straight from the off. And then, oh wait, what's that? That's motherfucking Nathan Fillion with his face and everything? 10 out of 10, top of the ranking list, greatest game of all time, no further questions. Why they cast Tom Holland in the Uncharted film and Nathan Fillion is right there, oh, I never know. Anyway, I liked pretty much every part of this introduction cutscene. It tells us enough to get us up to speed with the squad, but doesn't dwell on any details for too long. These guys all know each other well enough to have a bit of banter, but they haven't been a squad for too long. We were introduced to Dare, who has secret orders that we can't know about, and there's clearly a history between her and Buck. As far as the squad is concerned, we're about to jump onto the Covenant cruiser, but Dare has other plans. I love this scene in particular as we're launched down to Earth from our orbital ship. It reminds me of simulator rides at theme parks, and this one in particular did a good job of getting me hyped to drop in and kick some alien bum up and down the streets. As we descend towards the Covenant cruiser, we start changing trajectory as per Dare's orders, but before we can get anywhere, the cruiser enters slipspace as we previously saw in Halo 2. In that game, I had assumed that the entire city had been leveled by this huge explosion. But this reveals that it was actually just an EMP, so while still fairly devastating, not nearly as much so as I had previously assumed. I'd like to genuinely thank everyone who didn't spoil this for me when I brought up this destruction in both the Halo 2 and 3 videos. I know it must be tempting to correct mistakes about 20-year-old games, and genuinely I applaud you for letting me have this moment of realization here. That said, the reveal that it was just an EMP was a bit of a letdown once I started exploring the city. Before realizing that it wasn't some sort of nuclear explosion, I thought we'd be spending this game crawling through the wreckage of a leveled metropolis, linking up with any survivors to repel Covenant reinforcements or something. And I mean, I guess that is pretty much what we end up doing, but in a more put together city than I'd imagined. I consider ODST to be a game of two halves in terms of both narrative and gameplay, which I will dive into a bit later on, but for now I think we might as well discuss the combat of ODST. So let's talk about guns. Roll the montage.
Sniper!
Honestly though, there's not too much to talk about regarding combat with this one, as by and large this is just Halo 3 again. They have brought health packs back though, which we haven't seen since Halo 1, and I certainly found myself trying to find cover much more regularly here, which I guess makes sense as we're not the Master Chief anymore, so we're probably not valuable enough to wear armor with decent shields. I'll be honest that in principle I do prefer a health pack system over regenerating health in games. In principle. A health pack system is easy to get wrong if you don't put enough medkits around the levels, and regenerating health can be done well and complement the gameplay, but they can also be done badly, and while I don't think ODST does a bad job with this system, I've certainly seen it done better elsewhere. Like in Halo 1, which I felt was too stingy with the amount of medkits available, ODST gives you a regenerating shield which protects your health bar. Unlike Halo 1 though, ODST will play increasingly fast heart monitor noises the more health you lose, which is annoying when you can't find a health kit, which I found to be generally hanging off walls rather than scattered around the battlefield. I also never figured out whether I have a shield meter or not. I guess the red eye effect coming in around the edge of the screen means that your shield is down? It has been so clear in previous games, so I feel a bit useless that I've completed this entire game and I still don't 100% know the visual indicators for key features. I'm also not a fan of the HUD in general in this one, as I found it too intrusive and it clutters the screen. I did have the same initial reaction when I first started playing Halo 3, but I very quickly forgot it was there. Here though, that feeling never went away. There's a lot of space here which is just yellow bits, but with no information on them. I know it's supposed to be the inside of the helmet, but bringing back that comparison from earlier, Republic Commando went for the same effect, but did it much better in my opinion. But this is still Halo combat, so the combat is still great. I noticed the pistol and submachine gun are silenced now, which made me think that stealth was a viable option in the more open areas, but every time I attempted it, I would get spotted by an enemy that I wasn't currently shooting very quickly, and they would seemingly instantly alert the entire area, so I'd very quickly fall back to jumping around, launching grenades, and picking up whatever weapons I could find on the ground. While this is still as enjoyable as it's ever been, I feel like it's a missed opportunity given the different perspective. I ended up playing this the same way I've played the other games, except I did have to take cover a bit more frequently this time. Part of me was expecting something closer to, say, Call of Duty, having us stick to cover and pop our heads up briefly enough to get a few shots off while hoping we don't get clocked ourselves. But for the most part, this was just Halo again. Which again is fine, I enjoy Halo combat, but I think it's a shame that they didn't try to mix it up a bit more considering the dramatically different narrative focus. So other than the silenced variant of existing weapons, I don't think we get any new guns in this one. But everything from all the other games is here for you to play with, and ODST gives us plenty of opportunities to use them all to their full potential. There is a lack of enemy variety here though. I mean, we aren't even fighting any elites for some reason, despite this taking place before the Covenant turned on them, and obviously there's no Flood because they hadn't gotten to Earth yet, so we're just left with grunts, jackals, brutes, and a few hunters. There are these new enemies called Engineers, which was another similarity between Halo and Mass Effect that I added to my list, and these guys seem to buff nearby enemies with shields, so they need to be taken care of quickly and try not to think about any moral implications. They also explode when they die because fuck you, he was a father, damn it. I'll be honest though, I've never really been too bothered by the lack of enemy variety argument people make about games, and it certainly didn't bother me here. Yes, there are objectively less enemy types this time around, but there's still a mix of different threats like snipers or twats with rocket launchers and such, plus there's different vehicle types to worry about in certain sections, which adds to the variety and keeps things engaging. So yeah, there's not really much to say about the combat that wasn't already said in the last 3 videos. You can't dual wield anymore, which is fine by me because my brain can't manage 2 guns at once, and there's no equipment like in Halo 3, so I don't have to worry about not using them enough. While there isn't much else for me to say about the combat itself, we do have some stuff to talk about when it comes to the narrative and how that impacts the gameplay. This is a Halo game, so I think most of us knew roughly what to expect in terms of combat, but the narrative approach here is completely different from anything seen in the series before. I had assumed we would be playing exclusively as the Rookie, the faceless, nameless, and voiceless person in a suit of armor. And initially we do, and I'll be honest that this wasn't a very impressive welcome to the game for me. We do later jump between the various members of the squad at different points after the initial drop, and I really like that aspect of the game, and I will be gushing about that later on, but my first impression of the game was this big, mostly empty city that I spent a good few minutes fairly lost in. The Rookie has been out cold in their drop pod for several hours, during which time the rest of the squad has been kicking ass and taking names. As the Rookie, we walk the mostly intact streets of New Mombasa trying to find out what happened to the squad, which we piece together by finding bits of kit lying around in different places. This kind of made sense to me at first, because the first clue we find is a helmet buried in a display panel. I thought we were playing through the events being shown to the Rookie through a video recorded by the helmet or something. Similarly to when we find a drone part later on. The piece of kit the Rookie finds contains footage that explains what has happened, and we get to play through that scenario. That made sense. But then we start finding spinny armor plates and a fucking empty foam canister. Clearly I misunderstood how much the Rookie actually knows about what happened, but I did make myself chuckle at the thought that the Rookie had some Dominic Toretto level deduction skills and could figure out exactly how the preceding Banshee battle took place after they dropped this canister here. Since completing the game and watching that behind the scenes documentary, I can see that a lot of effort was spent on crafting this city environment, and apparently it is all open from the get-go, so you could find the pieces of equipment and therefore access their related flashback missions in any order you want. That's pretty impressive, I guess, though they all do seem to be in some sort of narrative order. While I didn't engage in much stealth combat, I did appreciate that the streets and squares were big enough that I could scout out enemy patrols and avoid combats altogether if I wasn't feeling it. And I'll be honest, I largely wasn't feeling it in these sections. I quickly came to see these Mombasa street sections as a barrier between me and the good parts of the game. I found the flashback missions to be so good that I wasn't interested in walking through mostly empty streets listening to sad music. Since completing the game, I've seen people praising the noir atmosphere that these scenes evoke for them, but I just didn't see it that way. Sad music and rain doesn't make me think of film noir, it makes me think of emo kids who grew up playing these games. And I've seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit hundreds of times, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to film noir. I do think the way the story goes towards the end did have a retroactively negative impact on these sections for me. The sad music, relatively empty streets, the destruction left after a battle, even the audio logs of someone, I think, trying to escape the city during the invasion while also arguing with the city AI. This all painted a picture of an elite soldier, a weapon of the UNSC deployed too late to the fight, too late to be of any use, unable to help the very people they have sworn to protect. It started to remind me of the film Jarhead, where soldiers were trained to kill and deployed to a war zone only to not be able to do what they were trained for, to not have any effect or impact on the war at all. Even if the gameplay elements were getting between me and the shooty bits, narratively, I really liked where I thought this story was going. But by the end of the game, we single-handedly storm an underground facility infested with enemy forces in order to rescue a sentient being who holds the key to understanding the Covenant's actions on Earth, and we escape with our team after a blazing escape across the highway and a desperate last stand against an onslaught of enemy forces to become gosh darn heroes. I thought we weren't supposed to be playing as the Master Chief this time. I was fully expecting for the game to end with the rookie realizing they'd missed everything and everyone had gone home, that they were stuck in a Covenant-controlled, ruined city. We'd still get to play through some heroic shit through the flashbacks of the others, but the rookie never made it. No one would know their story. Just like countless other soldiers that are lost in wars and conflicts throughout human history. No one would even remember their name. But no, we're the hero, it all worked out in the end, and none of our friends died, hooray! We even get to meet Sergeant Johnson. Though this confused the hell out of me. This scene takes place 1 month after the end of ODST, which takes place while Chief, Johnson and Keyes were off on the Delta Halo in Halo 2. At the end of that game, Johnson is on that Halo while Chief is on the Forerunner ship back above Earth. The third game then starts with Chief jumping off that ship and being discovered by Johnson in the jungle, and we know what happens to Johnson throughout that game. So when did this take place? Sorry? Does the Forerunner ship have an incredibly slow hyperdrive compared to UNSC ships? Did Johnson and Miranda get back to Earth several weeks before Chief did? So yeah, I think it's a shame that the story ended the way it did, as a more tragic ending, even if only for one character, might have felt more impactful. At least that's my hot take on it anyway, but I'm not a writer, so what the hell do I know? What I do know is that despite the slightly disappointing narrative of one half of the game, I consider the other half of this game to be made of some of the best levels in the entire series so far. If any of you weirdos who like listening to people shit on things other people enjoy are watching this, you might as well piss off now and go watch some more Ben Shapiro videos or something, because I'm about to suck the dick of this game so hard it's gonna turn your dad gay. It's fair to say I quite enjoyed the flashback missions in this game. We get to jump around between the different members of the squad as we find out how they managed to recover and find each other after being separated during the intro. More importantly, these missions feel like some sort of compilation of the greatest hits of Halo scenarios. There are sniper-focused areas, big vehicle sections, tank levels, wave defense, but not annoying ones like in Halo 2, flying sections, one-man infiltrations, bigger battles with loads of other dudes running around. Every other Halo game so far has had that one level which would put me off playing through it again. The library, Sacred Icon, Cortana, whatever. I can't think of a single level like that in ODST. I mean, I guess the level in the Warthog on the highway was a bit bullshit at first, but other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed every single level in this game. I still think the Ark from Halo 3 is my favourite level in the series so far, and nothing here really touches that. In fact, that kind of level, the huge open sandbox areas with roaming vehicle battles, is the only type of encounter missing from this game, which to my mind is the most Halo of Halo experiences. That's what the first game introduced and made it stand out from the crowd for me, and while a few levels here touch on that style, I would argue nothing here truly represents that kind of experience. We start off with Buck in a fairly standard feeling fight through the streets in a failed attempt to rescue Dare. We then jump over to Dutch as he bounces between vehicles fighting through a wildlife reserve, stopping off occasionally for sniper battles across a small valley. Next, it's off to Mickey for a pretty epic tank section, and I think this does take my top spot for forced tank sections in Halo. This is just great from start to finish. There's always something to shoot, and I think the claustrophobic setting of the city streets adds to the intensity of the combat. Dutch and Mickey then team up to blow up a bridge and a police station, I think with some intense battle scenes amplified by the amount of NPC friendlies running around, and I think this is one of my favourite sections in the game. We then jump to Romeo as he and Buck move across rooftops in a sniper-heavy section. I think it was in my Halo 2 video where I expressed how much I love the sniping in these games, as they have the surprisingly uncommon feature of being able to shoot someone regardless of how far away they are, and the sniping here felt great, with a really cool section as we run across a suspended steel beam and into possibly my favourite wave defense section of the entire series up to this point. I understand that mechanically this was nothing too exciting or different, but the pressure of having to find new turrets to pick up and the epic music backing up the action on screen elevates this to the scene my brain jumps to when I think of this game. Absolutely brilliant stuff, I loved it. We then get the Banshee level, which wouldn't put me off playing the game again, but would make me sigh a little bit when I see the loading screens for it. There's nothing wrong with the level itself. I thought it was a really good mix of on-foot shooting with aerial combat. But I don't know, did they change the way Banshees control? I've never had this much trouble with these things until this game, and I kept finding myself bashing into the floor or dropping below enemies and struggling to keep myself up in the air, having to keep doing flashy loop-de-loops to keep the aerial advantage. Then again, I think most other sections with Banshees have been primarily against other Banshees, so maybe they've always handled like this and I just suck at shooting dudes beneath me. At the end of this mission and on their way out of the city, Buck turns them around to go and rescue Dare. Not the rookie that they haven't even thought about since the drop, but his old flame that he's getting thirsty for. And her secret mission, which is vital to the war effort to save humanity, whatever. We jump back into the shoes of the rookie again, and we use the city's AI to pick up Dare's distress call and pinpoint her location. We make our way through underground facilities filled with Covenant forces on our way to the city AI's core. This level was fine, not at all bad, but it's lots of sci-fi corridors, so nothing too exciting either. At least not until we wander through a bigger area which is being taken over by a drone hive. Personally, I think they nailed the drones in this game, which they're calling buggers again, and I can't believe no one told them. I think Halo 3 utilised these guys better than 2, but here I think they got them just right in terms of their numbers and damage they can take. I was playing on normal and they would drop with one shot with most weapons, but they dart around like right little buggers, and there's so many of them they can quickly feel overwhelming. It's only a little part of the level, but I really enjoyed this little trip through the layer of evil alien bug bastards. We fight our way to Dare, who tells us that her secret mission is to secure the data from the city's AI core. However, some of the actions taken the flashback missions has made this more difficult, like waking up the hive of drones I was just talking about. That does make me question the timeline of events again though. Like, how long does it take for drones to build a hive this big? Apparently not very long, because the Covenant turned up, pushed through to Earth, deployed the drones who made their way underground and built a hive with enough time to go back to sleep afterwards. We fight our way into the core to find an engineer, who are basically organic supercomputers. They're also slaves of the Covenant, which makes me feel a little bit bad about expending so much effort to kill them earlier. This one has cut and paste all of the city AI's data into itself, so now the mission is to get this chap out of the city so that they can have a good look at that sweet gooey data stored inside it. We also bump into Buck, who has come back to save Dare, so the three of us join up and fight our way back to the surface to run along this highway under siege. This bit took me a couple of attempts to get through the first encounter, as I kept getting killed very quickly, but eventually I persevered and managed to get through the rest of it unscathed. So after that rocky start, I started enjoying this section a bit more. It got better once I got a tank though, as I could do some of the shooting rather than letting the NPC in the back fire the gun in this first person shooter game. This bit is cinematic as hell though, with Covenant cruisers tearing across the sky overhead, and then a big giant one in the distance firing off those huge plasma beams at the ground, and scarabs clambering all over the buildings heading into the city. It really does drive home the fact that New Mombasa is fucked and you need to get out. We then have a wave defense section, which was, it was something. I think it went on a bit too long, and maybe some sort of encounter against a couple of scarabs might have felt a bit more climactic, but there you go. Our boys fly in to pick us up and ride out of there to victory, and then watch a cutscene with a confusing timeline. So yeah, the bits between the Mombasa street levels were some of the best and most consistent levels that I've experienced in this series. One of the longest ongoing discussions in gaming is about the relationship of price and length. Yes, paying full price for an experience which you could blast through in an evening would likely leave you feeling shortchanged, just like an evening with your mum. The best lesson from this is to stop pre-ordering or buying games on release and at least wait for the reviews, or even better, wait a couple of months for the price to drop. Anyway, the point I was making is that while I understand the initial complaints about the length of the game, there is something to be said for smaller experiences that have less filler. Almost all of the fat has been trimmed from ODST, leaving mostly prime cuts of gameplay that are some of the best the series has seen up to this point, at least in my opinion. I'd rather have something short but excellent than something long and tedious. That's my excuse anyway. The change of perspective from Saviour of Mankind to Squad of Elite Badasses resulted in a much more narrow scope for the story, to the point where there isn't really any story to talk about. The squad gets separated, and over the course of the game they get back together and they go home. There, finding a defecting alien that knows Covenant secrets is literally the only development in the story, and from a narrative point of view, that could have been replaced by a USB pen drive or something. So while the story may not be anything life-changing or eye-opening, the voice acting is top-notch. I mean, they did kinda cheat by filling the squad with 3 blokes who are already mates and chucking in one of the most well-known video game voice actors in the business. If the central premise of the story is to find your squad, the squad needs to interact well with each other. Now, I don't think these guys make up the best squad in gaming or anything. I mean, this isn't Bad Company or Republic Commando levels of camaraderie and banter, but I enjoyed seeing the squad together and I cared enough to remember their names, which is becoming increasingly challenging for me these days. That was a knock against lazy writing, by the way, not about my deteriorating memory. The narrative in ODST takes a wildly different approach compared to the rest of the series, and I do appreciate it when franchises are allowed to do this, to give us a different view of the world that they have built, rather than having us see things through the same set of eyes every time. The core gameplay is largely the same here, but again it felt like a sort of Hall of Fame of Halo level types, but without the seemingly required level with the flood that no one ever likes. Playing this game so long after its release, it's hard to see why anyone would hold any of the negative points it received at launch against it now. This is an expansion pack in the style of expansion packs of old, letting the team experiment with the engine of the existing game to expand on the world, on the story, and try something new without the pressure that comes with releasing a full title. It feels a bit weird to be wrapping up this video already, but there's not really anything else to talk about without going over gameplay mechanics which I've covered in other videos. I thoroughly enjoyed about 3/4 of my time with ODST, and the other quarter is just the bits where you have to walk around in the rain listening to sad music. But this leaves me with the question of where I'm going to rank ODST. And this is where it gets a bit tricky and where I'm probably going to piss some people off. If this is the first video in this series you've seen, please do go back and watch the other videos so that you can better understand my opinions on those games. And I get money from the ad revenue, so cheers for that. Unless you join the Patreon, then there's no ads. But anyway, without going into detail, in my head, Halo 3 is the proper sequel to Combat Evolved. It took what that game did, built on it, and to my mind, improved on it. Halo 2 felt like it was developed by people who only worked on the more linear, corridor-focused sections of Combat Evolved, the stuff that other games in the industry were already doing, and then made a sequel focusing only on those aspects. It was a very good game, but not what I considered to be a worthy sequel to Combat Evolved. I know I said I wouldn't go into detail, but compared to those other 3 videos, this is fucking rapid. I said in my Halo 2 video that I didn't feel like that game built upon what made the first game so special, and so didn't feel Halo enough for me. In my weird and overly caffeinated mind, ODST is akin to a proper sequel to Halo 2. It improved on that game's best aspects while removing the less impressive parts, but the final product isn't quite what I would personally consider to be a proper Halo game, though parts of it do feel closer than what Halo 2 managed. As such, it goes here, in the number 3 spot. I've given it a podium finish, and I bet I'll still get people bitching in the comments. It's all engagement though, so I don't mind, but please at least get creative with your insults. I could do with a good laugh. And that really is that for Halo 3 ODST. I'm gonna miss saying that. Next on the Halo docket is Halo Reach, the final entry made by Bungie and another entry that regularly comes top of people's list of favourite Halo games. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get around to playing it, but I guess we'll soon be able to once and for all find out whether it is objectively any good or not, because mine is the only opinion that matters. Suck it. I don't know any prominent Halo YouTubers because I'm desperately avoiding as many spoilers as possible, but whoever they are, they can suck it because I'm here now. Yeah, that'll show them. Make sure to subscribe to see that, and maybe share this in the ODST subreddit or something so that I can get some more vitriol for not finding all the audio logs or whatever else I might have missed. While Halo Reach will be the next Halo video I put out, the next video on the channel will be on God of War 3, as I'm flip-flopping between the two series so that I don't get over-Haloed or over-God of War. So if you're as big a fan of Greek Massacres as you are Covenant bashing, then by all means go and check out that ranking series and stick around for more from both. Once again, a huge thank you to the Patreon members for their continued support. This is a one-man operation and these videos take far too long for me to make, and their contributions go a hell of a long way to keeping this channel moving forward. In return for their generosity, patrons also get credits and early access to ad-free videos. And I am looking to introduce different tiers and rewards eventually, but I'd appreciate some feedback before I implement anything, so please do join now to potentially have a hand in shaping the Patreon moving forward. And also a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed, liked, shared, or hell, even just watched this or any of my videos. It's still kind of bewildering to me that so many people watch this tripe, but I am incredibly grateful that my efforts aren't going to waste and are at least helping people pass the time while they're on the toilet or something. I haven't ended on a joke in a while, so let's try that now. Your life. See you next time.